I'm going to start this morning by explaining to you that a lot of people go into something called the caring professions because they've experienced some kind of trauma in their lives. Now, believe it or not, most of us, most humans, have experienced trauma. And it's common to say things like, well, this person had it a whole lot worse than I did, so I really don't have anything to be upset about. And that really is not a helpful statement, because when we say things like that, what we do is we deny ourselves the permission to feel the things that we need to feel. And by the way, us guys, men, are especially bad at this, because men don't let ourselves feel our emotions. And we've probably heard it all. Boys don't cry. Rub some dirt in it. Walk it off. And I think Tom Hanks summed it up better than anybody else could in the movie A League of Their Own, when he portrays a coach of a women's baseball team, and one of his players begins crying, and Tom Hanks says, "Crying? There's no crying in baseball." In fact, look at the so-called unwritten rules of baseball if you want to see the toxicity that this way of thinking produced. These unwritten rules, which, by the way, are still followed by a lot of players to this day, tell you that if you're hit by a pitch, you're not supposed to rub it. Now this right here, this is a Major League Baseball. I caught it at an actual Major League Baseball game. That didn't make the impact that I was hoping it would make because of the carpet. How about this? No, you get the idea. You want to get hit by that flying at you 95 miles per hour and then not rub it? That's pretty ridiculous. And my point kind of went thud like the ball made when it hit the carpet. Prop comedy is not my strong suit, I guess. But it's important to feel our emotions so we can learn how to understand them and how to heal from them. And it's important to allow ourselves permission to feel what we need to feel. Now, if someone's trauma is seemingly worse than our own, then it's very unfortunate for that person, but it doesn't take away from the trauma that we have experienced. You see, trauma is not a competition. And the ordained ministry is one of those caring professions that I talked about. And for years and years and years, the ordained ministry had only been for males. So for years and years and years, men who had struggled with trauma entered the caring profession of the ordained ministry. Now, of course, women can be ordained too. And although women had traditionally had other avenues to enter healing professions, more stereotypically feminine roles like nursing and social work and teaching, the playing field is now leveling on both sides, and men and women are, in many cases, equally likely to enter any of those kinds of caring fields. And you may be asking me, well, where are you going with this? Well, I'm a priest. I happen to be in a caring profession. And as you likely would have guessed, part of my reason for entering this caring profession is because I've experienced traumas in my life, and I want to help people to never have to feel the way that I was made to feel. Now, you might be asking, Father Tim, what kinds of trauma could you possibly have experienced? You grew up with both parents living at home. You attended private schools. Your parents are both college educated. You're married to a beautiful woman. You've traveled the world. You have an extensive education. And you have one of the best calls in the Episcopal Church right here at St. John's. And all of those things are true. But all of those things being true does not mean I'm immune to trauma. You see, I'm actually estranged from many members of my family, and I have been estranged from them for decades. My family system shamed me for being myself, and to this day, I haven't talked to many of those family members for years and years. My private school education taught me either intentionally or unintentionally that I should feel shame about who I am. And before meeting my wife, I had a couple of unhealthy romantic relationships. I dropped out of school more than one time. And I've had calls in the church that were not very fulfilling. Through it all, I kept doing that thing that many of us do. I kept looking forward. I looked forward, I looked ahead when I was in high school. So far ahead, in fact, that I decided I would graduate a semester early. I wanted to get a head start in college, so I did. But by doing that, I missed out on all of the fun senior year in high school activities. I missed out on my prom and senior signing day, things like that. And for what? A few mere months? It'll be better when I get to college. That's what I thought. And my lifelong dream of going to school at Notre Dame, well, that fell flat on its face during those same years. You see, I was dating a girl who was a few years older than me, and she was nearly done with college at the time. And I didn't want to leave her behind by going halfway across the country to go to school. It'll be better when we get married, I thought. And naturally, that relationship did not last. I missed out on that lifelong dream because I was looking forward. I'll get a degree in business, I thought. I love writing and I love journalism, but there's no money there. I'll make money as a businessman. So I went to business school and I got a bachelor's degree in business and a subsequent MBA. It's going to be so great when I make money as a businessman. But guess what? I never worked as a businessman. It wasn't my calling. My first marriage failed. How weird, because I told myself it'll be better when I can get married. It wasn't. My first marriage was unhealthy at best and in many ways disastrous for both of us. But what if we get a dog? That'll make it better. Well, why not 2 dogs? Why not 3 dogs? Why not 2 cats? Then I'll be happy. When my ex-wife moved out, I stayed in our home with 3 dogs and 2 cats and a pretty low wage. Am I happy yet? It doesn't feel like it. Now later when I met Brandy, we dated for 10 years. And all the while I kept thinking, it'll be better when we can finally get married. And I went to seminary for a second master's degree. And I kept thinking, it'll be better when I graduate. It'll be better when I'm ordained. It'll be better when I can work as a priest. When I was in Salt Lake, I thought, it'll be better when I move to Phoenix. It'll be better when I finally get my 3rd master's degree. This one, by the way, from Notre Dame. It'll be better. It'll be better. It'll be better. Someday, it will be better. I did a whole lot of chasing. And by chasing, I later discovered that I was running, and not running to, but running from. Running from feelings I wanted to escape. Running from feelings I didn't want to feel. Running from emotions that I didn't give myself permission to experience. And by constantly looking forward all the time, I was making a huge mistake. I was neglecting to pay attention to what was going on in the present. In our gospel passage today, Jesus talks about the wise or the educated missing what's right in front of their noses while the children see it and experience it and enjoy it. Who's truly wise in this case? Is it the educated person who's anxious to get his next degree from a new school? Or is it the child who appreciates the caterpillar crawling up his finger to his hand? Who's truly wise? The person who is so anxious to chalk up another book that he's read during the calendar year, or the child who looks at the beautiful Arizona sunset and just simply says, say what you will about children, but one thing's for sure, they feel their emotions. They might not understand their emotions, but they feel them. And they'll let you know it. They will anyway until we foolish adults tell them that they shouldn't. When we tell little boys that they can't like the color pink. When we tell little girls that they can't enjoy playing with fire trucks. When we foolish adults teach our children that their feelings are wrong. That's when they, too, stop appreciating the beauty they otherwise would have loved. And they hold it in. Now, when I was little, I cried a lot. And that was much to the chagrin of my parents and teachers. And it made me the target of bullying by my peers. So I held my tears in out of fear and shame. And by holding in my tears, I strained the muscles in the back of my throat. I had a physical response to the emotional pain. And I complained of sore throats. But my doctor could never see any irritation. Lozenges and cough drops didn't solve anything. And I didn't know that that was what was happening. But had I been given permission to feel what I needed to feel and express my emotions appropriately, I never would have had the sore throats that plagued me as a child. And I would have been much more expressive through grade school and high school and even college. I'll give you an example of what I mean. 8 years ago, this summer, I witnessed the birth of a baby for the first time. And when someone asked me, "What was that like?" I said, "It's fine." What? What was wrong with me? I witnessed the miracle of life in person, and all I had to say was, "It's fine." It was amazing. I'm trying to think of a word that I can say in here. It was bleeping amazing. It wasn't just fine. It was the most incredible thing I'd ever seen. But I'd kept my feelings to myself for so long in fears that the wrong ones would escape, that I didn't let myself experience feelings, whether they were good or bad. And I failed to appreciate that moment for what it was, a simply amazing moment. Now, that child, by the way, is now 8 years old, and I'm sure he's a handful. But I hope his parents are letting him feel what he needs to feel. Jesus says to bring our burdens to him, and he will give us rest. We don't need to carry around things that are not for us to carry around. Now, that doesn't mean we don't do it, because we're only human after all. But we don't have to. We don't have to carry around other people's baggage. If your dancing makes me uncomfortable, then that's my problem. It's not your responsibility to censor yourself to keep me comfortable. And if my crying makes you uncomfortable, well, then that's your problem. It's not my responsibility to hold in my emotions to keep you comfortable. Now, of course, I'm talking about within the guidelines of socially acceptable behaviors. If I'm making noise in a quiet room, then it becomes my responsibility to keep the noise down. But the tears can still flow freely if they need to. And the cool thing about expressing our emotions is that when we do so, Jesus is with us. And Jesus has been through it all. He's the perfect person to take that yoke. He knows us. He loves us. And he wants us to be whole. Now, sometimes being whole means feeling sadness or anger. Sometimes it's feeling happiness and laughter. And sometimes being whole is planning for our future. But sometimes being whole is living in the moment. What good is the future, after all, if we don't bring our experiences from the present right along with us? Rest. Jesus promises us rest. We don't need to do anything to earn it. We don't need to do anything to make up for taking time to rest. We can put our trust in him. We don't need to go into a healing profession as a means of making up for ignoring our own feelings. Now, we might go into a healing profession, but hopefully that's because God is calling us to do that. Not so that we can, as so many ordained ministers do, try to fix ourselves. Sadly, seminary is often a means for self-help for so many students. Emotional wounds never go away completely, but we can heal from them. Sometimes thinking back can be upsetting, and sometimes we ask, why? Why did it have to be this way? Why was I made fun of for my tears? Why did my family not love me enough to stay in contact with me? Why did I allow myself to become so blinded by distractions that I neglected to follow through with some of my biggest lifelong dreams? But those things are all in the past. Maybe someday we can find the answers, and maybe someday we won't. But we can heal. We can give our burdens to Jesus and let him worry about handling them. For now, we get to live in the moment. Yesterday, I was at a grocery store, and there was a little girl in the child seat of the shopping cart with her mother picking out some groceries from the aisle. And I stood fascinated as I watched this little girl, because she waved and said hi to every single person who passed by. And if they didn't see her or hear her, or even if they ignored her, then she said hi even louder, and she waved even bigger. And when the people passing by did respond to her, her smile grew huge. And if she was ignored, then she moved right along to the next person. Lord, help us all to be like that little girl and to live in the moment right now. Amen.